Welcome back to Buy or Buy. Today we're diving into a car that has somehow completely slipped right under the radar of the modern enthusiast market. We're looking exclusively at the 2000 to 2005 Toyota MR2 Spyder. Yup, the ZZW30, the third generation of Toyota's mid-engine sports car. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why this Japanese-built mid-engine roadster is literally the best-kept secret in the automotive world right now, and why its days as a budget-friendly option are, well, rapidly coming to an end. Okay, let's jump right into this. To really understand the MR2 Spyder, you kind of have to understand the joke that defined its entire lifespan. So picture this. Toyota looks at the legendary ultra-lightweight Lotus Elise, and they decide, hey, let's build our own version with a transverse mid-mounted layout. But then, they drop in a standard, everyday Corolla engine. They priced this incredible little roadster around $24,000 back in 2000, and then quietly discontinued it in the US by 2005. Why? Because honestly, practically nobody bought a $24,000 mid-engine roadster when they could walk into a Ford dealership and grab a V8 Mustang GT for the exact same money. And that wild dynamic leads us directly to this specific number, 27,941. That is the total number of MR2 Spyders sold in the US over its entire production run. It peaked really early and then dwindled to just over 900 units in its final US year. But here's why this matters to you right now. That low sales volume, combined with its totally misunderstood reputation, has left the Spyder as the absolute cheapest way to get into a real Japanese-built mid-engine sports car 20 years later. Section 1. Engineering and Underdog. Let's peel back the skin and look at the mechanical anatomy of this third-generation chassis. Now, what's really fascinating here is the engine choice. This is the 1.8-liter 1ZZFE dual overhead cam inline-4. If that code rings a bell, it's because it is from the exact same engine family used in your everyday Toyota Corolla, the Matrix, and the Celica GT. But here's the twist. Toyota took that absolutely bulletproof commuter engine and mounted it transversely behind the cockpit, right ahead of the rear axle, and it powers the rear wheels exclusively. 2,195 pounds. Let's just pause for a second to let that reality really sink in. In a modern era where sports cars are regularly crossing that hefty 3,500-pound mark, a curb weight of under 2,200 pounds makes the Spyder one of the absolute lightest cars Toyota has ever sold. And let's take another quick pause here. 50-50 weight distribution. Since the engine is tucked away in the middle and the car is just so incredibly light, the rear-wheel drive balance is frankly flawless. Make no mistake, this isn't just a commuter car with the roof chopped off. This layout delivers legitimate, exotic handling characteristics you'd normally have to pay big Porsche or Lotus money to experience. So how does this actually translate to the road? Well, you get a 6,750 RPM redline from an engine making 138 horsepower and 125 pounds-feet of torque. And because you're pushing so little weight, 0 to 60 happens in a respectable 6.8 to 7.2 seconds, with a top speed of around 135 miles per hour. But honestly, here is the craziest part. Because it's literally a Corolla engine in a featherweight chassis, you get 26 miles per gallon in the city and 32 on the highway. I mean, it's a mid-engine exotic that basically costs pennies to fuel. Moving on to Section 2, catastrophic engine killers. If you're seriously going to buy this car, we need to be brutally honest about the fatal flaws hiding in those early ZZW30 models. The absolute worst-case scenario you really need to watch out for is catastrophic precatalytic converter failure. On the 2000 to 2002 models, the factory precats are mounted directly inside the exhaust manifold. Over time, they can literally break apart. And when that happens, abrasive ceramic dust gets sucked right back through the exhaust valves during valve overlap. It essentially acts like sandpaper, permanently scoring the cylinder bores and totally destroying the engine. You're looking at a $5,000 to $12,000 engine replacement if this happens. So, listen to me. If you buy an early Spyder, the very first thing you must do, like immediately, is gut those precats or bolt on an aftermarket header. Building on the issues of those early cars, the 2000 to 2002 engines also suffer from some seriously poorly designed piston oil rings. Bad examples can guzzle over a quart of oil every 1,000 miles. And because it's mid-engine, if you don't check the oil constantly, you're going to starve it and kill it. Also, do yourself a favor and avoid the 5-speed sequential manual transmission, or SMT. The actuator motors and hydraulic sensors are super prone to failure, and just the used replacement parts alone will run you $500 to $1,000, and that's before you even factor in labor. But once you get past those major engine threats, the rest of the car is actually incredibly cheap to run. The long-stroke engine vibrates and eventually fatigues the rear engine mount, which is just a $200 to $400 fix. Fuel pumps will eventually fail, causing a no-start condition, but that's about $300 to $600 for the OEM assembly. The vinyl convertible top, yeah, it's going to tear. That's a $200 to $800 DIY replacement, or you can shell out around $2,500 to $2,750 for a factory hardtop. You'll also see cracked plastic taillights, worn 5-speed synchros on high-mileage cars, and some pretty brittle interior plastics. But really, beyond the engine itself, we're just talking about standard, affordable Toyota maintenance. So there's a really brilliant divide in the Spyder market. On one hand, you have the 2000 to 2002 danger zone, which absolutely requires immediate preventative maintenance for those precats and oil rings, versus the 2003 to 2005 models. For these later years, Toyota heavily revised the pistons for the US market, which effectively fixed the oil consumption, and they even added a 6-speed manual option. Those later years are without a doubt the absolute sweet spot if you want a daily driver. Which brings us to Section 3, the market landscape. Let's take a look at used pricing and see how the MR2 Spyder actually stacks up against other famous roadsters when you're scrolling through the classifieds. This used pricing is exactly why we're covering this car today. While the Honda S2000 and the older second-gen MR2 Turbo demand anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000, and 2000's rivals like the Pontiac Solstice and Saturn Sky hold steady premiums, the Spyder has absolutely bottomed out. You can literally get into a driver-quality Spyder for $6,000. Compare that to the front-engine Mazda Miata NA, where clean examples are just soaring in price, or the Lotus Elise, which is in a vastly more expensive universe. The MR2 Spyder is literally the only mid-engine Toyota you can buy used for under $10,000. And that brings us to Section 4, the final verdict. And spoiler alert, it's a buy. Here is exactly how to buy one based on your specific budget. And keep in mind, global production ended for good back in July 2007, so there are no new ones coming. If you're looking for the budget pick, grab a 2000 to 2002 driver with higher miles for $6 to $10 grand. Just remember, got those precats on day one. If you want a reliable daily driver, you'll want to spend $8 to $14 grand on a 2003 to 2005 model with the revised pistons. Now, clean, low-mileage examples sitting at $14,000 to $20,000, those are your long-term keepers, and they are appreciating fast. If you manage to find one with the rare factory hardtop, expect to pay a $1,500 to $3,000 premium, making it the practical pick. And finally, the performance pick. Turnkey examples that have been swapped with a high-revving 2ZZ engine from the Celica GTS, those trade for about $12 to $22 grand and are highly, highly desirable. We are definitively calling this a buy because it is simply the cheapest mid-engine Toyota ever made. Period. The core Japanese build quality holds up incredibly well over time, and right now we are finally seeing JDM enthusiasm for the ZW30 chassis rising. Used prices have actually started moving up after sitting totally flat for over 2 decades. So I want to leave you with this final thought. We've all seen what happened to the Supra, the S2000, and the older MR2s. They absolutely exploded in value and left average enthusiasts totally behind. So ask yourself, will the analog rear mid-engine ZZW30 be the affordable Toyota sports car you look back on in 5 years and wish you had bought when it was dirt cheap? Think about it. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next time on Buy or Buy.